The pandemic has upended our lives, blurring the lines between work and play, weekdays and weekends. It's also wrecked our sleep schedules. But as the start of school looms and health officials warn us that we're in for the long haul with the pandemic, it's time to get our sleep back on. Amanda Jewson is here to lend a hand. She's a sleep specialist and founder of Baby's Best Sleep. Amanda, good morning.
Good morning.
What are you hearing from families about their sleep schedules through the pandemic?
They're everywhere. They're everywhere and anywhere. Mostly for the grown-ups. I think kids generally seem to be following the parents' lead, to be honest. But there's a lot of stressful things out there. And when humans are stressed, we tend to not sleep as well as we usually do.
What's interesting, I take a look around in the pandemic. Our lives have slowed down. Our communities are quieter. Why then are we struggling to get to sleep?
Yeah, you would think our outside world would match our inside world, but unfortunately that's not the case. Every day there's a lot of news. People are wondering what's next, what's happening next. There's a lot of internal noise, I call it. And so when there's a lot of internal noise, our body responds with a physical stress response. So that's it producing more cortisol and adrenaline because in past prior times, when we weren't sleeping, that meant that there was a threat, a physical threat, whether that was an animal or something happening, and we needed to be on the move and we needed to be aware and going. And so our body doesn't understand that it's a virus and we're safe in our house. So we're at a 10 out of 10 at all times. And so when we shut our eyes to go to bed at night, there's a lot of things swirling and whirling around in that brain, and it makes it hard for us to fall asleep and have that good, restful sleep.
I think we could all use a reminder on this. What does good sleep do for our bodies and our lives?
So, I mean, you're asking a very biased person this question. I love sleep. This is I feel like it is the new superpower. You know that Bradley Cooper movie where he takes a pill and he becomes invincible? Mm-hmm. I feel like this is as close as we're going to get, is literally just having 8 hours of sleep. It does a lot for us. It changes our mood. We lose weight if we should. We repair our muscles and our cells. Our brain is sharper. We're more creative. We digest our food better. Literally, I can't think of anything that sleep doesn't fix. And, in terms of, pandemic sleep, I think about everyone's very concerned with their immunity. Sleep, especially with immunity, allows your immune system to practice the fight it is going to fight when it sees a virus. So if we are not sleeping, our bodies don't actually have that fight time to fight viruses when they do show up.
What's interesting, because bad sleep habits, I've read, can be very viral-like in a house. So actually, yeah. And especially with us spending times in sort of bubbles, little social distancing bubbles, everyone in the house needs to make sure that they're following a good sleep schedule. So let me ask you this. What can we do to get things back on track?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot that we can do, and I think about in my own house, especially my husband is a night owl. I can go to bed a little bit earlier than him, but it takes a lot of work for us to say, okay, I'm going to do the thing that I need for my sleep. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it can be quite challenging to kind of shift it up in the family. There's a lot that we can do to get back on track, especially in the COVID world. Number one, I try to tell people to limit their news consumption right now. It is a 24-hour news cycle. There's a lot of new information, especially with regards to COVID. So limiting your news is key. I suggest about an hour a day, and then not after 8 p.m. We don't want to be taking the news to bed with us, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. There are some great things that we can do to kind of help our physical body as well. Our bodies sleep well in a lower temperature. So if we're too hot, we're actually not sleeping well. So I always suggest a bath or a shower. That's a great one for kids as well. Right before bed, lowers your body temperature, helps you fall asleep and stay asleep as well. one of the things, again, on that physical part is, the LCBO has been releasing some of their sales numbers since the pandemic has started, and they're quite high. And so, although having a glass or two of wine before bed can help us fall asleep, it doesn't help us have a great rest after that deep, restorative sleep that I was referring to earlier. So we want to go to bed sober. Alcohol is a diuretic, so we are going pee all night, which is not very fun. But it also doesn't allow us to get into deep stages of sleep, so we don't feel as rested when we wake up. THC, again, we are still learning a lot about THC before bed, but what we do know is it can limit our amount of REM sleep, which is where we process and restore. So we want to be careful about that and watch the research on that one.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because you're right about coming back to the point about alcohol, because people do use it sometimes to unwind at the end of the day. Kids across the province are starting school in a few weeks. What and when should we be working on getting their sleep schedules back to normal?
Well, I mean, we have time. So if you're listening right now, you're one of the lucky ones if you're very motivated. I always suggest a slow and steady approach to moving a child or an adult's sleep schedule back, because we're very much, our circadian rhythm is kind of programmed, right? We have a body rhythm to the day. So if your child is used to going to bed at, let's say, 10, and we say, guess what, you're going to bed at 8, it's going to be really hard for them to do that. So we want to do slow and steady. I suggest shifting bedtime back about 30-minute increments. So if you have time now, start now. Slow and steady until you get to 8. If you have a week of an 8 o'clock bedtime before school, even better. If you don't have that time, if you say, oh my gosh, I started late, do it by, 15 or so minutes every day until you get to your desired time. Part of that shifting the bedtime as well, and this is also a great strategy for grown-ups who have found themselves going to bed at 1 and 2 in the morning and want to change that, by the way. You have to start waking yourself or your child up as part of that shifting process. So if your child needs to be up by, let's say, 6:30 to start their day, we need to start waking them around that time. So their body accumulates sleep pressure to want to fall asleep at that earlier bedtime. And sleep pressure is a fancy way of just saying how tired we feel, the rate at how our body feels tired.
Thank you, Amanda. Great suggestions. Now, I know that you have a few things on the go. You've got the business, the kids, and I hear you're moving homes in the middle of the pandemic. How's your sleep?
I don't know. It's always been my superpower. I was that kid in high school who didn't have a curfew because I would be home by 11 because I needed a good rest. I'm not kidding. My friends still make fun of me for it today. But yeah, I am sleeping well. I've always prioritized it. But I don't know. I mean, even me, though, in those early days of the pandemic, I was not sleeping, which is saying something. So I can't imagine how it was for everyone else.
I think you make a good point. The idea that one needs to prioritize sleep. I think that's the term that I'm leaving with here. Well, good luck with that move. I'm pretty confident you'll be well slept through it. And thank you for speaking with me today.
Anytime. Thank you.
Amanda Jewson is a sleep specialist and founder of Baby's Best Sleep.